After everything you've seen out there in the real world, let me ask you one final time. What are the Hunger Games for?
Now I know the whole world is an arena. And we need the Hunger Games every year to remind us all who we truly are.
Welcome home, Mr. Snow.
You know, I had an amazing time doing the 3 Hunger Games films that I made. You know, I spent 3.5, 4 years working with Suzanne Collins and with Nina and with, you know, a fantastic cast. And it was a great world and a great set of stories and great themes.
Coriolanus Snow, future president of Panem.
It's hard not to want to come back to the Hunger Games. This project has just occupied a very special and important part of my mind and my heart. And we did have such an incredible time making these movies together. Something that means so much to you, that means so much to audiences, but that also has been just a very joyful experience of making these films with this sort of family.
But you know, I have to say, by 2015, when it was all said and done, it had been a lot of work and I was a little burnt out. And you know, it was, I want to say, about 5 years later, after I had done another movie and done a television series and, you know, had sort of cleaned my palate a little bit, that I got a call from Suzanne Collins.
We hoped maybe Suzanne would write more books, but we really didn't know until we got the phone call.
Saying that she was almost done with a new book and was probably about a month away from letting Nina and I have a look.
The chance to come back and get to collaborate closely with Suzanne on the script, work again with Michael Arndt, with new additions this time with Mike Leslie, and to have Frances as my partner. That was something I didn't think I'd ever get to come back to that because we really didn't know that there would be more.
It had been a while and I had felt sort of refreshed creatively and was really looking forward to reading it and also sort of starting something new again.
Lucy Gray says in the book and in the movie, I don't sing when I'm told to. I sing when I have something to say. And Suzanne is that way. She doesn't write a book just because, oh, that'd be good business to write another book. She writes when she has something to say, something that's on her mind, something that is meaningful to her. And the themes and ideas of this and the exploration of how a boy shaped by trauma is still responsible for his own choices and how he becomes the man that we know. I think for her to do something as unexpected as that is very Suzanne, because again, she's not going to just make some sort of cynical play, because it would be easy to just crank out a fan favorite and be like, hey, we're gonna do Haymitch's games, we're gonna do Finnick's games.
You know, as fun as those may be, I think we kind of know just from the books and even a little bit from the movies what their stories were. So you already have a hint. And so I think what she did was much more interesting because we didn't really know the background of Snow. And what also just really excited me too is that Suzanne, and I think this is why the first books were so popular, really writes based off an idea. She has an idea and an idea for theme and themes that feel and are relevant for our times. And you know, one of the things, and I think the most important thing, if you were to talk to Suzanne, that she was thinking about when writing this book is the sort of state of nature debate, right? The kind of Hobbesian view of human beings are sort of brutal and savage by nature.
That the games are a reflection of really our true nature, which is eat or be eaten, and that anybody ultimately will do anything they need to do in order to survive. And that's who we are, and therefore we need a government that controls and contains us, and that the state has to be more powerful to control its population.
Versus Locke, who feels like we as humans have these inalienable rights and should be free, and maybe even like Rousseau, the sort of romantics, who really all you need is art, love, and nature. Gaul is basically a figure in this movie who represents the Hobbesian view of the world and is grooming Snow and sees the potential in Snow to sort of follow along with those philosophies.
Sejanus, believes that the government's role is to protect the rights of its citizens. He makes his impassioned plea that the citizens of the capital and citizens of the districts are no different. They're all human beings who are fundamentally entitled to a government that protects and serves their rights.
And it's this kind of battle that she was seeing that was like sort of not only polarizing the nation, but polarizing the world.
And whether we are fundamentally good or bad or somewhere in between really shape the government that you think you need or want or deserve, or in the case of Snow, ought to be in charge of.
And that's kind of what this story is all about. So one of the reasons that I was so excited was it all felt like a fresh slate, right? Because, having started with Catching Fire, the reason that I did it was I felt like there were enough new characters to cast. There was enough new world, including the arena, but also new parts of the capital that haven't been seen. It was enough for me to sort of build, even though I was inheriting some things. But this one was like completely from scratch. Meaning we're seeing a city in a world that's 65 years earlier. It's right after a war, so it's, let's say, kind of a reconstructive era. Wardrobe would feel different, language might feel a little different. Obviously, all the characters in the cast are completely new. So that was just extremely exciting.
Suzanne builds a world that is more than just a young adult fiction world. It's one that is, tackles a bunch of real-world issues within the kind of entertainment of YA novels. And obviously, I was already a fan of the first 4 movies. Coriolanus is just such a complex character, and seeing him go from young man who is kind of troubled and fighting for his family to young man who is still troubled, but this time has kind of a goal and an aim, albeit a dark one, and he becomes kind of dark and heavy towards the end, and he becomes the kind of dictator that we know him to be in the original movies. And seeing that kind of origin story take place is something that I just couldn't not do.
When Suzanne was coming out with a new book that had to do with the subject matter of Hunger Games, I was so excited. I think the characters in the Hunger Games were so much more complex and so much more human, and to have a woman at the front of that story was a really, really incredible thing to have growing up. And I feel really fortunate because I was very young when those came out, and so I didn't really know much of a world without it. And so I'm very grateful to Suzanne Collins for that. And then when it came to this book too, even though Lucy Gray is not necessarily the forefront of the story, it's very much about Coriolanus and his journey to becoming the anti-hero and then becoming the villain. Lucy Gray is such a compelling character, and she's kind of a breeding ground for what Katniss becomes 65 years later.
And I came here to ask your star mentor a question. What are the Hunger Games for?
They're to punish the districts for their uprising, to commemorate the end of the war.
Commemorate the dull, dull, dull.
This is just the 10th Games. And when you come into this movie, the issue is that the previous 9, they take a bunch of kids against their will and throw them in the arena. It's over really quickly. It's brutal. It's upsetting. And people don't want to watch it. They don't like it. And so Gaul is trying to figure out how to bring entertainment value.
Who would watch the games if we cared about what happened to the tributes?
Everyone. If they thought the tribute they cared about had a chance of winning. People need someone to root for and someone to root against. We need them to invest. We could even have people place bets.
And so for us, to look at these games as, that first attempt to really bring entertainment value to something which is horrific and not intended to be entertaining. And so the idea that Lucky Flickerman, this is the first time they've ever had a host for the Hunger Games. And so to see all of these sort of seeds being planted, that we've seen them fully grown in the first 4 movies, and to see those seeds being planted in this movie was really exciting for us.
The games obviously work because we've seen they've gone on till the 74th and 75th Hunger Games, and obviously, Stanley Tucci's my family. It's some sort of a family business. And so but I'd be the first time we're establishing it. So, you know, what is it that this guy can do that makes it work? Why is he a good host? And that was the challenging, fun part about it, was trying to, you know, discuss with Francis and locate, like, what are the things that make him the right host for these games?
One of the things that was very clear is that the games are in a very sort of early, rudimentary state. And that there's an arena, there's a wall, there's weapons in the middle, they go in, and, and my guess is like the games rarely lasted more than like an hour or two. And this is the first time that landscape changes, right? Because bombs go off and kind of open up the arena a little bit, and that changes and makes the games go longer and starts to give people the idea of sort of creating landscapes and things. And some of the Rebel almost sort of creates what could become the cornucopia, which is not really something in the book. That was something that we kind of found in the designing of the arena this time. But when we started, and I didn't even realize it was going to be more brutal, because I've done, games before, but when we started and we started shooting some of the sequences and some of the deaths in the games, I felt that it does feel like the Hunger Games, which is good, but it feels very different. The characters within the games feel very different. The fact that they're not wearing uniforms feels very different and makes everybody more sort of individualistic and specific. But also there's just a sense of body count now, because like when you look at a movie like Catching Fire, when people die, they're sort of lost in the bushes or they're plucked out by hovercraft and all that. But here you get the bodies are left kind of lying around. There's carrion birds that come down and pecking at one of the bodies, and they're just left in the dust and the debris. And there's just something really emotional about that and strong, and we all kind of felt it within probably 2 or 3 days of starting to shoot the arena, which was the first part of our shooting schedule, that this was going to feel very different than the other games.
Enlighten me, Mr. Snow. What are your plans after these games? Tyrants, in the course of history, it's not about their tyranny, it's about what created that tyranny, socially, individually, in that person. How did it's not suddenly somebody doesn't label you tyrant. You were a child once, you were a young person. What causes that? Psychopathy, what causes that frenzy socially, that charm, that power? That's really interesting to me, tracing back, and that's what this in a fictional way, that's what this movie is doing. Because there's so many moments, especially the way Tom plays it, of actual genuine kindness. But then do you second guess yourself in believing the character's kindness because of what they end up becoming?
Dean Highbottom is one of my favorite characters. And I remember even in reading the book that there's those fun characters, and you see them every once in a while in books and you see them every once in a while in movies. They appear as villains, and then by the end you realize they're not, and that they've actually sort of been subversively trying to do good. And Dean Highbottom is that. He's one of those characters that you think is a villain, you think he hates Snow, which he does. But because of that, and because you're rooting for Coriolanus Snow as a young man, you dislike him and think that there's something wrong with him. And he's one of the creators of the Hunger Games. But you slowly learn through the course of the movie, and certainly by the end, that the Highbottom you thought you knew is not who he is, and that he is really quite a tragic figure who's been trying to do good all along.
We loved thinking about this question of how somebody who really is a big sister to Coriolanus, somebody who loves him, somebody who's known him forever, somebody who sees that he has good in him, the capacity for good, the capacity to see good, but very clearly she saw his dad through a very different lens than he did. He thinks of his dad as this hero, as this figure you have to live up to. She saw sort of through the dad to the darkness within. And to see Tigress as a young woman, to see her warmth, her hopefulness, how much she's rooting for him, how much she believes in Corio, and how much she's counting on him. And is ultimately, though, willing to let him go, I mean, she doesn't really have a choice, in hopes that he might not follow in his father's footsteps.
People can be good. You can be good. You are good.
And that notion that it is at once a choice, or that you can choose to go to the dark or to the light, she sees in him this tug of war, and is trying, I think, to bring more of what we imagine to be his mother's influence than his father's. But also to see, yes, a young woman who seems so promising, so full of life, and to know that you've met her after a real decline, one that has actually made her be ready to see her once beloved cousin taken down and removed from power.
Who's the third?
What?
The person you killed, Coriolanus, he just said he killed 3 people.
You get this out.
There was Bobbin in the arena in Mayfair, and who's the third?
The idea for us, for me, for Nina, for the writers, for Suzanne, for the actors, right? Everything that we do leads up to the sequence in the end in the cabin in the forest. And it was tricky and it was worrisome when we started, was we had to get people to root for Coriolanus Snow, knowing that he's the villain of the other films, right? Knowing what he turns into. And so the trick was, how do we kind of manage and modulate the elements of each of their characters so that when they get to that moment in the cabin, you understand what he might be thinking and the threat he might feel. And you have to understand what she's thinking and the threat she might feel. So you understand what happens in the forest.
Lucy Gray! I've said, are you trying to kill me? After everything I've done for you!
And why he feels betrayed, and why she runs, and why she leaves the way she does, and why he shoots, and you know, and that was like really all the kind of character work that we were really focusing on. Is A, can we get people to empathize with Snow and root for him, and B, can we get the audience to the point where they understand why those characters are making the choices they're making at the end, and it feel honest. It's interesting, we had a pretty exhaustive casting process for the 3 main roles, for the Snow, Sejanus, and Lucy Gray role. And with Snow, we saw a lot of people. And there were a few people that were like pretty interesting, but he kind of came in late to the game and he just kind of knocked it out of the park. There was a quality about him, there was a nuance to his performance. I mean, a real sense of understanding the character. I could also see, even though he had dark hair at the time, that he bore resemblance to Donald Sutherland a little bit. But there was also just a sense of control in his performance that I really liked. And you could tell that this guy, based on the scenes he was doing, that he had real craft and he really knew what he was gonna do, and he was gonna be really prepared and was gonna be able to really convey the complete sort of emotional arc of this kid, kid who's, you know, desperately like putting on a show with the charisma to sort of fit into society, slowly becoming the monster that is Snow.
A big part of what we first talked about, Francis and I, was what makes Corio tick to begin with, and a lot of that was to do with his ambition for his family. And although he's an ambitious person later on, most of his ambition to kind of fight and become the kind of person who will do anything, do whatever it takes to win, is mostly stemming from his family's needs. And the film begins with his family at like the precipice of like serious hunger, and he will do whatever it takes to get them out of that place. And then that gives way to a Corio who will start to do anything for himself just to get to the top. And watching that kind of crumbling of his morality, yeah, we talked a lot about where it began and where it ended and how we weaved that path in between. And a big part of it was just kind of building the world and working out what this world was and what that would do to a person.
Tom is such a goofy guy, which I love. I mean, that's so important because when you're doing heavy subject matter, which this is, so from time to time it gets very heavy, or even when you're just having a light day where you don't have to say anything, or the first day that Tom and I had together working on camera was the explosion in the arena, where the arena gets, you know, exploded into a billion pieces. We were being attacked with air machines and sound machines that just made it look like it was actually exploding in our faces. And I have never laughed so hard in my life. It's like supposed to be this terrifying scene, and then the second we yelled cut, Tom and I were just having so much fun with one another. He's very, very goofy and fun, and at the same time has such a respect for an actor's process and he has his own. And I learned so much from watching him in between takes and the questions that he asks about text. The text is always very important to him. The script is very important, and the subject material, obviously the book. He cares so much, which is always such a very refreshing thing to realize that they care just as much as you do about whether or not A, that you make a good product, and that B, it feels true to you, and that we feel true to each other in that sense, because this relationship is very important in the context of the story for a lot of reasons. It's not just about the romance, but about the way that they trick one another and the way that they interact with one another. It's a very, very careful, curated moments that Tom and I have worked a lot on behind the scenes. So I got very lucky. He's my favorite male lead I've ever had. Like, truly, I can say that. He is my favorite.
You know, I thought I might find you here sitting all by yourself.
James, what are you doing?
What do you think? After what I did in the arena? My father had to buy the Academy a brand new gym just so I could get my diploma.
Tom's a very intellectual person, a very intellectual actor, and he's a really fun person to have like a conversation with about where intention comes from. And, you know, it's sort of the more technical aspects about acting, where you have a scene and then you talk about intention and objective and what does this mean? Like, why do you say this? Like, why do you choose to say this sentence? It's a lot of fun to act with Tom because it might end up in a completely different place than you expected. And, you know, Tom loves to try different things. He loves it when you try different things, and it's those are wonderful people to get to collaborate with.
You seem like a good man, Coriolanus Snow. Sure would have been nice to meet you under different circumstances.
With Rachel, it's sort of a funny story. I almost knew immediately that I wanted Rachel to be in it. And I happened to be in London doing the score for my previous film, and she had just gotten to London because she was doing Snow White for Disney.
But I had just moved there from New York, and I was very lonely and very sad. And I sat down with Francis and we talked for 4 hours about the book, about the other movies, about this movie, and the approach to the character. I had such a fantastic conversation with him.
But I remember, you know, maybe 3 hours and 45 minutes into this meeting, I asked, is there anything else that I can answer for you? And she says, yeah, when does it shoot and where does it shoot?
And he said, well, we're filming in Poland and in Germany, and we would start filming right before you finish the film you're working on right now.
And she went ghost white. And what I realized was we were basically starting 3 days after Snow White ended.
I said, I don't think I can do that. It's so far away. I miss my family, I miss my significant other, I miss my friends, and I don't think I can spend an entire 12 months out of the country. I just don't think I can do it.
And the weirdest thing happened, and this is like a strange kind of combo. We were on the hunt for Sejanus, and we were looking at all these Sejanuses, and nobody was right. And what we realized from the reads is that we actually had the kind of character wrong in the script. So we actually paused on casting Sejanus, rewrote the character all the way through, restarted the process, and then we got Josh as one of the first people. Josh Rivera came in and read the new version of Sejanus, and he was like, he's amazing. So I'm in Berlin, I'm looking at this thing going like, this is definitely Sejanus, he's the one. And Haiti, who's my assistant and second unit director, looked over my shoulder and said, you know, that's Rachel's boyfriend. And I was like, no way.
After we cast Josh, I think she started to have, second thoughts. She had really wanted to do, she'd loved it, but didn't feel like she could just go straight into another show.
So we cast Josh purely because he was the best. But I knew that once we started casting, and now she was probably a few weeks away, maybe a month away from finishing, so she was gonna see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? I was like, I wonder if we're gonna get a call.
Lucy Graybeard.
The movie I had slated to do got pushed to the next year, and I had kind of caught my second wind for being away from home. And I called my agent and said, do you think they'd still be interested in me over at Hunger Games?
Of course, the job is still open, so I have a long talk with her now really about the character, things that I've learned, especially from reading different people, about the songs, all this kind of stuff. And we decide we want to do a chemistry test, even though Zoom, with her and Tom.
You know, Francis told her, just start the audition by just singing to Tom.
I asked her to sing one of my favorite songs kind of that era, called Wildwood Flower, that was made famous by the Carter family, to do like a kind of slow, romantic a cappella version of it, sing that to him, do that first.
And I sat there and, you know, Zoom doesn't really give you much emotional feedback, but I sat there and I ended up crying just watching her sing, because she has this kind of incredible life in her when she sings, which I've really not seen in many other actors before.
Are you coming to the tree where a necklace of rope side by side with me? Oh, strange things did happen here. No stranger would it be if we met up at midnight in the hanging tree.
I mean, if you can feel that through a Zoom screen, you're definitely going to feel it through an IMAX screen. And then getting to know Rachel has been kind of like one of the joys of my life. We've become really good friends. And yeah, it's very easy to fall in love with Rachel. She's very charming. She brings a lot of kind of raw, fiery energy to what she does, which is exactly what Lucy Gray needs.
Then I got the part that night. They sent my tape to Lionsgate and to Suzanne Collins, and they both signed off, and I got cast. But I originally said no.
How tantalizing to see all your shining young faces on this auspicious day. As the more enlightened of you may have guessed, I am Dr. Volumnia Gall, your humble head game maker in charge of the War Department and all its affiliated concerns.
Viola was always Frances and my first choice. I think he mentioned her early on, and I was like, yeah, that's it.
I love Viola Davis. I love her work. I think she's one of the best actors, living now, if not one of the best actors of all time.
He knew Viola, and before she read the script, when we were sending it to her, Frances reached out and was like, this character, she's on the wacky side. She is a great villain, but she's also quite eccentric, a little bit nuts. And, did she want to play a character that was like this sort of out of the box character that has a really sick, dark sense of humor? And she loved the prospect of that.
The only stipulation about the casting of Viola kind of came from Suzanne, which was just that Suzanne had always imagined Gall being much older than Viola is. So we aged her with the makeup and wigs and things like that.
I was incredibly intimidated to meet Viola.
Is it Lucy Gray? Unless you can put a leash on your deluded classmate, she might as well be dead as far as you're concerned.
I've been watching her for years, and I've been a big fan of her for years.
Breadcrumbs.
We went to the same drama school, so I was also intimidated knowing that she's had the same training that I have, but probably when it was a lot tougher. And so I knew she'd have a thick skin and more tools than I could ever hope to dream of in her toolkit. But she turned up on set and she's incredibly gracious and she's got so much gravitas, but she's generous in the way she works. She brings this kind of explorative nature to her work, which Gall needs, because Gall is like this. I remember Viola and Frances describing Dr. Gall as like a Willy Wonka.
And the original Gene Wilder Willy Wonka, which is there's a sort of a sinister quality that's kind of underneath, but really it's a person who finds joy in the creative ways she's coming up with things. So even if they're horrible things for sort of torture or death or punishment, it's the creative side of it that she finds fun.
And so what Viola has brought to it is this kind of constant playfulness and experimenting, and the way she works, she's always trying something, and then if that doesn't work, she tries something else, and it just feels like she's got this big toolkit that she's just pulling things out of. And as an actor playing with her, you're just kind of like dodging what she throws and then throwing things back, and vice versa, and it just feels so rich at all times.
All of the young actors, worshipped her.
I remember our very first scene together. She walks into the room and 200 heads just turn.
Everyone shuts up. Instantly. I've never seen anything like it. Dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. It was just bonkers. And then she stands up and gives this deliciously unhinged performance that I don't think any of us saw coming.
I just remember her like coming up on this podium and looking at everybody.
And the first thing you hear is this sort of kind of terrifying giggle.
How tantalizing. It was just like, I remember it like shaking me like in my chair, like I didn't know what to do.
I start tearing up. Like, thank God the coverage was on her. Everyone starts tearing up.
My eyes started to well up because I was like, this is the person I've been watching, and I'm in the same room with her. Watching how slow and intentional she is, and how she attacks every single line and word.
Her voice is just amazing. And when she speaks, you're just like, wow. Everything she says, it's just like, yeah, that's how it's meant to be said.
It was so polished and like unnerving and scary and like exciting.
It's been honestly one of the best workshops that I could ever, attend. It's unbelievable.
It's the same with Peter, the first day we worked with him. These are some of the greatest actors alive.
I am now honored to introduce to you the creator of the Hunger Games themselves, Dean Casca Highbottom.
Peter's great. He and I had met about a movie I had done in 2010, and he ended up not wanting to do it because he didn't feel like there was quite enough meat on the bone for him, which I totally agree. There was not. And this one, certainly there's a lot of meat. There's like, there's a real character arc and a lot of reveals and great dialogue, and there was just plenty for him to do. He's just fantastic. I mean, it's like I'd been a fan of his for a long, long time, and then, obviously being a fan of Game of Thrones and what he was able to do with that character. And so to have him on set, I mean, everybody was just sort of enjoying every moment of him.
Peter Dinklage is genuinely one of the best actors I have ever met and had the privilege of working with.
Proud, I see. Like your father.
He is always finding something fresh. We could have done 70 takes, and every single take feels like he's just found something new, which, as an actor, playing against him or opposite him, you can't ask for anything better than that. That is like absolute gold when every time, it's 70 takes in, and he comes in with like a left turn, a right turn, a right hook, a left hook, and he does it with a smile as well. So it's, it's always kind of, you never know what you're gonna get. And he just loves it. He loves the craft of acting, and so you go into a scene with him and you can't help but love it too.
I would be more concerned with your own survival if I were you. It's fitting that both your parents could be here for your big moment. That compact. How many times did I see your mother use it? I wonder, to powder her beautiful face.
It's very, very addictive, and I wish I could act with him on everything I ever do.
Your little excursion is in violation of about 5 Academy rules, Mr. Snow. Chief amongst them, endangering a capital student.
To see how much he can do with so little, just in his eyes or just like a little gesture, and that it communicates so much. To see him in this role, it's very easy for an actor to get maudlin. He's a drug addict. He's clearly sort of tortured. You don't exactly know why until you put it all together in the end. It's easy to want to hate the person because he is an antagonist, and yet you're really curious about, like, well, why does he not like him so much? What is it between them? There's an excitement about seeing Peter Dinklage that's really different than seeing any other actor, because people just love and respect and admire him so much.
Chins down, but don't get lost behind those screens. And smile. That's why we have teeth.
When we were coming up with who could we cast for Lucky Flickerman, who is an ancestor of Caesar Flickerman, the Stanley Tucci character from the other movies, and who's a really fun character in the book, Lucky is. Very, very early on, Jason was sort of pitched to me, and I was like really into that idea. I'm just a huge fan of his.
It's this bizarre thing to be able to become a part of something that sort of already exists in people's minds, and there's a world that you can envision and see, and even though this is a prequel and it's a different look and takes place in a different time period, it's just kind of crazy to be able to join something that you've already been a fan of and already been watching, and to kind of picture yourself in the world. It's very bizarre, and it's really fun to watch them shoot it too, as a fan.
In the script, the character Lucky Flickerman, in my opinion, is very, very, very underwritten. And I said, I think there's just a ton of opportunity in any scene you're in to have much more stuff.
Happy Hunger Games, and remember, when your tribute dies, you're out, all right?
He's like, there's places in the script where we cut to him, but who knows exactly what the space will be like in those exact moments, and so myself and Mike Leslie, who wrote this, got together and we were just coming up with yarns and yards of lines and kooky things.
So we have tons of other options for things within scenes.
Our apologies, by the way, for saying the word lover on television. This is going out publicly, you know. We can't say that.
Something about Jason is that he does something new every take with what he says and like the jokes that he makes, and it has us all in stitches every single time. It's always fresh, it's always new, it's always within the character and the confines of the time period that we're in and the situation that we're in. His behavior doesn't ever give in to the fact that it might be a sad, tragic thing, which makes his character so funny and gives that spark of joy that films like this that have very dark situations, like we need that a little bit, and so it's very lifting.
Really fun process. And in shooting, we would actually shoot out almost all the scenes in the auditorium during the middle of the games. We'd usually shoot out, you know, sort of all the characters watching the games and, you know, Snow and Sejanus and whoever and anything. And then we would kind of finish our day with 2 or 3 hours left and just shoot Jason. And it would just be versions of Jason doing and trying different things and riffing. And it was fun because he's also, you know, he really is, for the most part, the kind of comedy in the movie. He's brings the levity and a little bit of the relief to the movie. And so you want to make sure you get some of that.
The creator of The Hunger Games, Dean Highbottom. Dean, thank you for all that you do and all that you've done. Is the after party still at your place? It was really fun. I just hope that we did an all right job for him.
Are you okay? What happened?
What I love about Hunter is that I find her so wildly endearing and something so sort of good and honorable and kind of pure about her. And what was great too, and just having different people read, and a lot of people read for the part, is, you know, they were doing this kind of capital affect, and you just could kind of feel this sort of phoniness of trying to be capital. And Hunter kind of came in, and I think she comes from a much more sort of naturalistic school of acting, and she had this kind of really endearing, slightly awkward kind of quality that I really fell in love with, that I thought worked well for the Capitol, worked well for Tigress, worked well for the relationship with Tigress and Snow.
I was curious because my only reference for her was from the previous books, what she looked like in this world, and it was really different. So in a way, I kind of felt like I had some more creative control and like liberty in a way, because you know, this Tigress hadn't been established in the same way that the previous Tigress, and it's still somewhat unclear because we don't exactly know what happens between this story and then. So that was like kind of exciting and encouraging versus like having to fill the character up to like what it's supposed to be set in stone, you know?
You know, she's also, I just think, stunning to look at. So the idea of this woman that's so tall and is into fashion and into style, and who's going to become, you know, this character in the earlier movies 65 years later, you know, you could sort of see how that progression, you know, could happen.
She plays Tigress with this kind of, this lightness and this savviness at the same time, which shouldn't really work, but it does. I don't think she knows it, but she's kind of a genius. She is so fresh every time. Every take is just the kind of like raw, like interior energy just kind of bubbling out. And so you'll be sat opposite her in a scene and she'll just like, you know, it's so natural at all times, and so light and buoyant, and it's beautiful. It's been very easy to kind of play cousins and people who know each other intimately because she's just like an open book, and she's a beautiful actor.
Snow.
Sir?
I received the results of your aptitude test this morning. I'm pretty familiar with the director Francis's work. He's a man of great vision and is very calm and kind and specific, so I was very, very happy to be working with him and the team. Obviously, this is a huge production, and I know how many fans out there are sort of waiting for anything to do with the Hunger Games, so this is really exciting to be in a prequel. I'm working in the last week of production in Berlin, and people are still smiling at each other, which is always a good sign. It's a really good bunch of people, and I'm very happy to be involved.
We got so lucky with our entire group of tributes, from our young kids with Knox and Luna and Sophia and Cooper, and then you have our vets, Dimitri and Nick and Mackenzie, Kiel, everybody. I could sit here for hours and talk about how great they are. They're just such salt of the earth individuals and so happy to be there doing what they're doing and so committed to it.
So we're in Cologne right now in Germany, and we are filming the carriage scene, so when we all get off the trains.
The tributes were in the train for days to travel to the arena, and they're very tired and angry, but still some of them are ready to fight.
This is actually, for my character, this is where he first gets bit by the bat and where he gets rabies. So this is the beginning of the end for Jessup.
When we get to the capital, they just throw us in a zoo where we're just shackled together in district pairs, and then from there it's directly to the arena, so it's not like fancy like in the...
There's no buffet, we haven't been fed in like 3 days, haven't been fed since since the reaping, we haven't been fed.
And we don't get trained and stuff.
It's very different to the later, the 75th, I think, Hunger Games, where you get sort of enter celebrity status and all of that. No, we just get put in a zoo.
It's funny because we all have to kill each other, but we also get along so well. So it's kind of hard to switch back and forth. But yeah, I mean, all the other tributes, they're all super talented actors and just great to work and a fun time. So it's just always a good time on set with everyone.
You can talk to everyone, and no matter how mean the character is, the actors are super nice. So what's your requested item?
Oh, we were just saying to the lovely viewers at home, we had requested.
The alphabet?
No, we requested a fun hat to make friends.
I guess we're all a family now, really. We've been together for so long. When you're on a job like this, there's not really anyone else to be with than the rest of the cast, so we've all become really close and we all get along really well.
Because they're just such a fun group of individuals, and they're just the most talented people for the roles as well, which is such a win-win-win for everybody.
Okay.
Everyone's born as clean as a whistle, as fresh as a daisy, and not a bit crazy. Staying that way is a hard road for hoeing.
Very early, I remember being in my backyard and speaking with Suzanne Collins, and when we were talking about the book Ballad, and it was in that call that she actually said that there's a huge musical element to the story. And so then when I read it, I sort of saw what she was talking about. Because Lucy Gray's a performer, she's performing songs quite a lot through the story.
So you're kind of thinking, well, what's that going to be like? But, her lyrics are incredible, and her knowledge of country music and the roots of country music, early Appalachian, bluegrass, folk, country style music.
You're as pure as the driven snow.
Suzanne is this big country music aficionado, especially the kind of music that sort of comes from the old ballads from Scotland and England and Ireland. And so he hired a great music producer and songwriter, Dave Cobb, and he and Suzanne had long talks about the history and the sort of references for each of the songs that she had written.
Suzanne Collins has been probably the most brilliant person I've ever talked to in my life. Just an absolute hero. When I talk to her, she puts me in this world. She tells me, kind of every single detail and the feel and the sound and the inspiration for the songs. So it's going to be fun to take all this history of maybe British Isles music and Southern music and mash it all together in this dystopian way in this future, and kind of keep it raw and rugged, and it just sounds like a fun thing to do, to kind of find a sound that isn't a sound that's been had before, We're going to start with As Pure as a Driven Snow as the first song. In this case, it's kind of finding the sound of Lucy Gray and the Covey. It's finding their sound. And so it's casting the right players. I'm having this incredible group of people come down and play on it. There's a girl, Molly Tuttle, who I'm a big fan of, and she's one of the best guitar players in the world. So she's coming down, and she's going to be the sound of Lucy Gray's instrument.
Okay, you got Molly Tuttle playing guitar, Dominic is playing mandolin, Brian Allen is playing bass,
Cassandra Lewis is singing, and Carmela Ramsey is playing fiddle.
The artists that he works with and assembled for these sessions, the music he composed, the way that it really fits Suzanne's lyrics. Every song, as we would hear the demos, they stay with you. They're so specific. There's not any two songs that you mix up with the other.
I want to influence how it's going to feel later by providing the right voices, and I'm just using my imagination of people I think are great, kind of come in there and put it all in one pot and stir it and see what we come out on the other end with, you know. What we're going to dig into, I just wanted to call, make sure you met everybody and kind of give a synopsis of everything. What we'll do is I'm going to run through it with everyone and start learning the song. When I feel like we got it in a good place, I'm going to, chime back in with you. So let's start from the top.
All right.
I'll start with one.
He wrote these great songs and got a great group of musicians together and recorded in Savannah, Georgia in a house, and the songs are just fantastic.
So that right there, let's hold that. It's like, you come down to my heart. And Francis loves music. He has such a good grasp on what he's looking for as well. So as we're doing this music, we're going to be all completely interactive. It's going to be Suzanne and Francis and I going back and forth and really discovering the sound together. So they're going to play a huge, vital part in every piece of the puzzle with connecting Lucy Gray to film. Hey, everybody, this is Francis, director of the film.
Hi.
Can you hear us? You digging it?
You guys are so talented. Thank you so much. Yeah, it sounds really, really beautiful.
We're just starting to work it out. We're going to run it, one or two more times and try to cut one. But I'd love for your feedback. I'll run it right now for you. And we'll play it and we'll voice the character for his imagination, Suzanne's imagination. I feel like I've tried to cast the best people I can, the best players who are just at the top of their game to all step up and become Lucy Gray, and the Covey as well,
You're as pure as the driven snow.
Beautiful.
So did all that, and then when we cast Rachel, played her all that music, then did some pre-records, which were almost more sort of rehearsals for her.
1, 2.
When I was a babe, I fell down in a heart. When I was a girl, I fell into your arms. We fell on hard times and we lost our bright color. You went to the dogs and I lived by my charms.
It was one of the most interesting things when I was reading the book, is I was like, how are they going to make this music work in the context of a film version, because I've worked on many musicals, and when I got all of the scratch recordings for the music, I just fell in love and was like, we got this part right for sure.
It's sooner than later that I'm 6 feet under. It's sooner than later that you'll be alone. So who will you turn to tomorrow, I wonder? For when the bell rings, lover, you're on your own.
Not only could she do the sort of pre-record in studio versions of these songs, but we also knew that once we had her on set, Rachel really could do it.
Well, watching Rachel sing on set was something where I would get chills or just sit there sort of stunned, especially because she mostly chose to sing live, which is really rare. Usually you lay down a track and then they lip sync or they maybe sing softly along, but they don't bring it every time because that would be exhausting. She brought it every time. And knowing that, you could see in real time that effect that she has on people when she sings, knowing that she also had the ability to bring performance to the singing, that there's so much emotion and character that goes into each one of those songs, really blew me away.
Suzanne had an idea of all of the songs. She had written all of the lyrics. All of those lyrics are still true to the book. But she had an idea for the tempo and what she thought all of the songs would sound like. The music ends up being this incredible focal point of the film because it's a sign of her revolutionary ideals, Lucy Gray. And so the first time you meet her, she stuffs a snake down a girl's dress, gets on stage and starts singing a song of revolution. It's such an incredible, powerful moment.
Can't take my charm, can't take my humor, take my will,
Capitol says keep rolling.
'cause it's just a rumor.
Singing for her, and this is where we really got lucky, is easy. It's like a no-brainer. It's just so easy for her. So it was just great to be able to go in and do these musical moments with her and just know how comfortable she was in that zone.
Well, hey there, District 12, did you miss me?
We were in Duisburg, and we were in the basement of an industrial park with train tracks and dust and dirt and grime. But it was dressed up to look like this underground speakeasy type. And I was singing these two beautiful songs that were written for the film, Pure as the Driven Snow and Nothing You Can Take But the Boot Stompin' version, as we call it.
Thinking you're in control, thinking you'll change me, maybe rearrange me, get back to your goal.
There were people dancing. We had like 24 dancers who were kind of dancing to our music. And the reason I had so much fun was, it was like we were actually playing as a band, and we had Honor on bass, and we had just the best time. I took guitar lessons. I learned how to play all of them so that I could play them live on set.
Fresh as a daisy, and all been crazy, staying that way, so hard road for holding, as rough as a bride, like walking through fire. This world, it's dark, this world, it's scary. I've taken some, it's so no wonder I'm weary.
We just had such a blast doing it.
There's a big sequence in the arena where she starts singing in the arena near the end.
Rachel? I've got one foot in the door, but before I can fly, I've loose ends to tie right here in the old day before.
Which, you can't capture that just in a recording studio, but when you're on set and climbing around and you're singing and you're feeling the emotion of it, she just nailed it.
When I'm pure like the dove, when I've learned how to love, right here in the old there before.
Hanging Tree as well, right?
Hanging Tree, and I just have like minutia on that. I'm gonna try to create, it's exactly pretty loyal to the old one, but I'm gonna add a couple extra chords, like literally one extra chord. It kind of makes it more haunting, because I thought maybe this is a prequel, to Wade and Bob.
This is, honestly, what you can do is do your version of it, and then when we hear Lucy Gray singing it, it's gonna be as if she's kind of writing it. So the truth is, it's like the first time that this has been written, and when Katniss sang it 65 years later, that's passed down through generations. So it could certainly have changed a little bit.
Beautiful. I'm gonna stick to kind of the vocal melody for the most part, but I think it'll be a real kind of a haunting incarnation of it.
Yeah.
I really want that kind of like little Celtic thing at the end. It's like we met up in Yuletide in the hanging tree.
We added a few little Easter eggs in the story. I mean, the book itself had some, right? So, hearing Lucy Gray sort of coming up with the song The Hanging Tree for the first time after witnessing a hanging, I think that's kind of a nice one.
Come into the tree where they strung up a man. They say he murdered 3. Strange things did happen here. No stranger would it be.
The movie doesn't really do the direct link to Katniss very often. It doesn't do the direct link to the original story too much. But there's a reason that the song has survived so long. And the hanging tree, there's a real tree that they hang rebels from in the middle of the square in District 12. You know, that song is kind of this haunting foreshadowing of what's going to happen to Sejanus and what's going to happen to Lil and Spruce at the, you know, towards the end of the film.
If we met up at midnight in the hanging tree.
She and Dave Cobb and the musicians were really able to sort of capture that kind of 1920s to 1930s sort of Appalachian quality, you know, that we all loved and we were all aiming for. And I think it's just a great added element to the movie and to the story. When it came time to make this movie, we started researching production designers, and Uli Hanisch was the production designer on Babylon Berlin, the Netflix series. And we thought, wow, you know what? Since we're sort of leaning into this kind of post-war Reconstruction era, and we even felt before hiring Uli, we might end up in Central Europe, and we might end up back in Berlin in Germany. Let's give him a call, see if he's interested. He and I had a long conversation about sort of how it would feel and in that kind of post-World War II Berlin kind of a way.
It's a kind of a comparable situation. You have a capital city 15 years after a war. Of course, then everything is like different, but to have this kind of a capital city in the progress of reconstructing and redefining itself, I found that very inspiring to compare that with the capital of Panem.
And he then went off and did kind of a research, kind of recon of where can we shoot this, because I wanted it to be primarily location-based. Like, I didn't think we should build an arena. I just wanted to have sort of real scope. And I thought we would get that by finding locations.
The Capitol had not removed all the rough edges yet, that the consequences and scars of war are still there. And so trying to capture in the production design that notion, like say, of a society rebuilding was just a meeting of material, location, and design that is, you know, all you could ever hope for in making a movie. But also to go back to the games and to go back to what were the games before they became the spectacle, to have the architecture resonate so deeply with the ideas of the movie was very thrilling. And then you take, say, Uli and his team, their knowledge of the historical architecture in and around Berlin, some incredible locations, and to be able to shoot in Berlin, to have that opening sequence when Coriolanus and Tigris are small kids. We shot that, you know, on Karl Marx Allee.
This main street in East Berlin that was built at that time to impress the Soviet Union and kind of rearrange this kind of Moscow Soviet kind of architectural style here in Berlin. And it's a unique thing actually in Europe, and that's why we started to compare the capital with East Berlin a little bit at that time and decided to come here, really.
We shut that down on a Sunday morning. It was incredible.
I think when we talked about the Corso from the book and into the script, I was thinking of Karl Marx Allee, like as probably where Snow lives and where he's going to be walking, and sure enough, that's where we ended up shooting all that stuff. And, you know, of course, we augment it digitally, to sort of make it a little more capital, but also a little more bombed out at times, or under reconstruction. Yeah, but Uli is just, he lives there, he knows it, his location scouts, and we also used Klaus, our location scout, who worked with us in Berlin on Mockingjay and did Red Sparrow with us, and he's the greatest, and he's Berlin-based too, so he and Uli really hit it out of the park with the location finds.
When you get onto a Francis Lawrence movie, you usually do not, that's my experience, you do not get a lot of stage days. He likes to, I assume he likes to shoot on location, and that's obviously the fun for me as well, because I'm a location manager, so I get bored to death when we're shooting on stage.
It was great. I mean, I was very, very happy to end up being able to shoot this movie primarily on location, having only built one set at Babelsberg that we had shot at the end of the schedule. The first location we shot in was Poland, which had the Centennial Hall that we used for the interior of the arena, which would need some digital augmentation, but you'd actually have the structure of a real arena that feels right. And that we can do that in Poland, and we could do the rest in Berlin and in Western Germany, like Dusseldorf, that Cologne area, for kind of the District 12 stuff.
We started with the concept and the kind of world building or world finding process almost. We were trying to keep ourselves kind of independent, from the logistics and the whereabouts. You were really trying to say, let us find out what we want to do first before we start figuring out where. And then we started to think about, okay, where the heck, for example, can we find this kind of an arena? And then we came back, for example, to our own research material, where we found this beautiful hall in Wrocław in Poland as a reference. And all of a sudden we thought, okay, but this is not so far from Berlin actually. It's like a 4-hour drive. Why shouldn't we kind of, discover the possibilities there?
That's a structure that is quite unique. I think there's only one similar building in the world, and that's in South Africa somewhere. And it is a huge building.
And of course, what we needed to do is to turn this kind of, because it's some sort of an event kind of hall, so it's not closed like an arena is supposed to be, right? So we had to come up with a design and to close the whole floor area, so to say, and also turn that into something harsh and brutal, and in this case really intimidating, what you need for the arena of the Hunger Games. And then, of course, for practical reasons, we had to cover the entire floor, which gave us the opportunity to come up with a Pan Am logo kind of floor design. And then, of course, we had to come up with all the big, debris and rubble pieces for everything after the bombing.
So we begin to develop this location very early, because it was clear that we have to make this rubble. So we make it out of styrofoam and put it's a tile glue on it, and then they were painted. So all these rubble pieces you see, they are fake, nearly all of them. And there were a lot of people building these rubber things for weeks and weeks and weeks. So because it was such a huge set.
Action.
The Centennial Hall people really let us take that place over and set it up so beautifully. It was like being on our own kind of sound stage, and the organization was amazing, and the Polish crew was amazing. It was a fantastic experience.
They've gone underground very quickly, but we're prepared for this. What you're seeing now is a live feed of security cameras.
It's an old tunnel that was built underneath a big electric company that built electric engines and stuff. It's literally just a dead-end tunnel undergoing, I don't know, half a street or something like that. And for us, it was perfect. It was just perfect to combine this kind of round-shaped thing with a square underground cellars that we're going to shoot. We're going to shoot in a water basin. It is a water structure that has more like a square look, and it's way bigger, so it gives you more the image of something that's very, very big and vast. And the other one is the tunnel is more like, oh, you can only go that direction, and if somebody's following you, that's kind of where the kind of suspense comes from.
Feels like we've shot all over Germany and all over Poland, We haven't. We've only shot in like 10 different locations in Poland and Germany, but we've traveled so much, it feels like we've really spanned the whole scope of Europe.
One of the things, and it was kind of a lucky accident that happened to us, was originally we were supposed to go to Poland right off the bat, shoot the interior of the arena, and then we were going to go back to Berlin and drive up north to shoot the countryside outside of District 12.
Originally, we wanted to shoot this at a lake closer to Berlin, but we came across so many problems regarding the permissions because we wanted to do stuff. We wanted to build a hut there. People had to jump into the water, that it finally didn't work out. We decided to pull the plug and find on short notice, like with 3 or 4 weeks left, needed to find something to replace it in Poland. And so we actually took like circles around Krakow where we were and just explored literally every body of water that we could find in the region. And this little lake, actually found it by accident on Google Earth, which is stupid enough one of our greatest resources to find stuff. It is literally the forest right behind the lake, so we didn't even have to travel for that. It was literally like, here's your lake, here you can build your hut, jump in the water, build your boat galley, and there's your forest. They literally had to go 100 meters up into the forest and everything was there. That's why this was a perfect location for that. There was a beautiful meadow nearby, which roaring hills and the trees peppered over the landscape, and it looked still green. That was another problem that we had, because back in Germany, where we originally wanted to shoot it, everything was burned already by the time we would have gone there. So we were very lucky that in Silesia, where we found this lake and this meadow, a little bit higher up, it's a couple of 100 meters above sea level, and it's more humid climate, so it was still green and looked like summer and not like everything's burned already like late summer.
And that was great. It was great to suddenly move outside and had this beautiful weather. And you know, it really is kind of one of the happier moments in the movie. And it's something that we talked about from the very beginning, that you know, these characters go through a lot. Most of it is unpleasant, and their time out in nature is actually sort of really kind of the few moments of joy in the movie. So it was really kind of nice to shoot that. So our time in Poland was really fruitful and really fun.
Here now, you know, we come back not to the East Berlin history background, but of course the history background of the Third Reich, because this is what they call the Olympic Park here, which is next to the Olympic Stadium, which was built for the Olympic Games in 1934. So right when the Nazi regime took over, or has been taken over a year before. So we have like a classic Nazi architecture, you know, here in Berlin, and this is part of it. So the Olympic Stadium, which we use for the arena exterior, because we mix the Centennial Hall in Wrocław, Poland, only for the interior, and have the exterior here at the Olympic Stadium in Berlin. And this here is called the Fencing Hall at the Olympic Park, and was built for the Olympic Games then. And that's why it has this kind of strange and unique shape, because obviously for fencing, you want the audience to be as close as possible, so they decided for this round shape with this kind of steep benches to sit around. And then, of course, all the technology we show here is pretty basic. You know, we have monitors, we have screens. We don't have really sophisticated things happening. We have studio cameras, we have surveillance cameras in the arena. We have microphones. We have the only thing which is a bit like crossover is those little almost like laptop kind of computer devices the mentors have, you know, in the control center to actually control the donations and all the stuff, and to send the drones with food and all that. So this was the only thing where we thought this reminds us, you know, it's something like an iPad or something like a laptop.
That's a mixture out of this 50s technology and the future.
Our kind of retro technology, you know, in our world, because we have all the big monitor and screen wall and also Lucky Flickerman stage. So here we wanted to establish mainly this kind of early 60s style again, because here we had the chance to really come up with all these, you know, devices designed from this period.
A sort of retro future idea kind of came in conversation with Uli and I, that was the sort of the idea, right? Because we were telling almost a period piece to the previous Hunger Games films, right? So you want some sort of future elements, but you want to feel like it's in the past. So we decided to go with that kind of retro future thing. So in the design of the cars and, you know, some of the props and things like that, that kind of work.
These drones are not very good.
We were always trying to bring the drones down and make it look kind of, you know, period and simple and as something which is like the first generation of technology to come. The design is a mix of, we found some vacuum cleaners from the 50s who looked a little bit like that. And then realizing that we need all the District 12, this industrial kind of locations, and we were looking in Hungary, in Poland as well, in the Czech Republic, in East Germany, before we kind of realized that the best possibilities are in West Germany, in the western part where the Ruhrgebiet and north of Cologne, where all the big industry used to be. This area is called the Ruhrgebiet, used to be the biggest industrial part in Germany, where you have all coal mining and steel and all that happening, or used to happen. So this is a unique place in a way, because this huge former steel mill became what they call the Landschaftspark Nord, which is like a industrial park, like a public park where people just can walk in and walk around and discover, you know, this old steel mill kind of facilities and technology in a safe way. And it's huge. It's a very, very big location.
It's safe to work in. It's accessible. The biggest problem is kind of to explain to the people that you want to close it down for 3 or 4 weeks. That's literally the biggest problem. And it looks just fantastic.
I thought it's interesting to take the District 12 or the working aspect a bit more serious than before, because again, like 65 years ago, maybe the whole coal mining and this whole part of what's happening in District 12 is maybe more important for the whole society of Pan Am than 65 years later. It's like in our real life here, you know, where the coal mining districts and the steel factory districts used to be more important for us than they are now. So we wanted to put everything, like the whole District 12 kind of world, inside a factory. So you never know, are you on a street, or is the street part of the factory, or is the whole thing a factory? Which also resembles a bit the idea of how this Ruhrgebiet area works, because the industry used to be so big that the cities in between are almost like part of those factories and not the other way around. And that's why we were looking just for all these locations right inside this park thing. And then the biggest interior, you know, became the hop, which is just like a basement kind of construction part of the steel mill, really.
Worked out perfectly. Just put in some floors, put in a stage and some lights, and it will look absolutely fantastic, better than you would have built it on a stage.
Last month, a peacekeeper and 2 mine bosses were shot dead in the pits.
That tree is not existing. It's a build up to 3 or 4 meters because of the hanging scene. It needed to be a controlled thing. We just put it in a kind of interesting looking environment with some steel structures behind that. It's actually the former water cleaning basins behind the steel factory that we were shooting in before.
That's the location north of Cologne, and it's not really a station, it's more like a depot. And it's a very, very big hall, really.
It's one of the train sheds that's actually big enough to stand in for a station. Our biggest problem was to find a train shed that was long enough, so we could have an actual train coming in or pulling into the station, and then people get out of the train.
And it houses like something like a locomotive museum kind of thing. So we had all those, you know, the wagons and all the cars were there, and we just had to pick the right one and clear the whole thing and shoot. So it was actually almost pretty easy location for us.
We focus on like places that have this kind of brutalist architecture about them, so they feel quite oppressive, quite brutal, quite simple, and yet they have scope and magnitude.
Incredible locations that we had in Leipzig, which is where the tributes are interviewed by the mentors, and ultimately where Snow arrives to find that he has not gotten away with it.
Leipzig, there's a huge monument called the Völkerschlacht-Denkmal, or the Monument for the Battle of the Nations, which happened in 1813.
It's amazing that we get to show up on set as creatives and you walk into a place that has historic gravitas and you're like, man, this means something. I get to use this in the work. I get to bring this to Coriolanus today, which is really cool.
The location for her is maybe the most modern one of all, and we decided to give her the most modern kind of surrounding because she is really the peak of everything. We use this kind of very cool, empty kind of concrete location with all those gray, concrete columns and nothing else really, and fill it with these kind of display kind of shelves, which again then we turned into kind of classic Bauhaus/Art Deco design, including her desk and the desks for her clerks and for the lab work and all that stuff. And then saying, okay, we have, all the jars with whatever kind of strange experiments. And of course it was meant to be very scary and very gloomy and really horrible, but at the same time you don't know exactly what she's doing.
We had 250 of these glasses with the creatures, so there were also people building for months as creatures.
This was really great.
It's his baby.
When it turned out that we were allowed to do it, I was really, really happy and satisfied. These are also kind of characters. They are creature characters, and they have to be different, they have to be believable, but you invent something completely new that needs to be believably living. We used the technique of 3D printing and printed these guys in different sizes to get the variety in there and to get them to life without acting. There's no actor in there helping to get alive.
It's living, it has to be believable. It's not a plastic figure in a jar, it's something else.
Tigress?
The snow apartment for me was very important. It was for me it's always important to start with some essential part for the story and design-wise, so we have an idea where we are going to, in which direction. I took that really from the novel because the fear of Snow to lose the apartment, which resembles losing, the reputation of the family, is his major concern. So in a way, I thought this apartment has to be important or good enough for somebody to become a monster, to become a dictator. I mean, to rule the world is you do that because you're afraid of losing this home, which is, of course, is totally out of proportion, right? And of course, it needed to be kind of representing also his father, who was not a nice person, obviously. So to took the evil spirit of this military-based father into that was also an important part. And then we were playing with some thoughts, and of course we ended up saying, okay, if Snow is the family name and a snowflake has a very specific shape, let's try to play with that. And then we designed the whole floor plan of the apartment like a snowflake, which doesn't make any sense in terms of architecture. And of course it's, you have to change it a bit, but truly the shape of the floor plan resembles a snowflake, which means that you have a central room and everything is leading like a star from the middle, which is also a kind of very uncomfortable shape for a place to live in because it doesn't really work. So to enter the stage and to enter the apartment makes everybody immediately uncomfortable because it doesn't work. It's not a room to live in, it's just a room to show off.
It was nice to have this range of, actors that have done many, many, many productions and have incorporated every type of prosthetic hair and makeup costume into other characters that they've done, and then having actors that were, very stripped down into what they needed to be and how they needed to look for their character and being their first time. So we definitely had the whole scale of every type of actor and every type of costume in the film.
She did a great job, and I will say also, Trish did a great job, but also the hair and makeup team in terms of the hairstyles for all of that and the makeup for all of that. It was just really well done, really great group of people.
You know, there's definitely key departments that I work really, really closely with, and that we have to share a lot of information so we can tell this complete story. And it all makes sense, and it's a nice flow together. And definitely hair and makeup are people I try and work with very early on. I, you know, am fortunate that I get much more prep time than they do, so by the time they come in, there are illustrations that I would have done because it's hard to illustrate without, you know, the head and the full look. So I try and be very respectful and have as much dialogue as I can with them. And so with Nikki coming in, we knew she has the huge challenge of wigs.
Trish was such an integral part of the whole design for hair, and, you know, having done one before, having done another Hunger Games, so she had that kind of intel, I suppose, with Frances and the way it was going to look. You know, I really love working closely with costume designers because they usually start before hair and makeup. So they have a bit of a handle on, you know, how characters are developing, and so, you know, hopefully give hair and makeup a lot more kind of influence that way. And then obviously with the director conversations and you know, collaborating with Sherry as well. It was a big part of it.
And Francis talked to us early on about, you know, the look of the film, and he wanted it to be really gritty and dark and dirty. And then there's just so many different types of characters on this film too, that we were doing period with a twist, and we were doing, you know, people that have been in a truck in mud for, you know, we'd be living in that world for a week and then switch over to like the academy and the lakeside. And so there were so many different avenues that we could really be creative on this film, and the Hob and the coal miners, and there were a lot of areas where we could push the envelope, and it was fun.
I can't say enough nice things and honest things and creative things about Yo, because he is very conscious of what other departments deal with, and he's very conscious about where he needs to include you in conversations about how he's going to light things. And we had a lot of conversations especially about the interior of the games, because it's such a big space, and seeing how it was going to be lit. And that also plays into a lot of, like, besides with the coloring and fabrication of the costumes and the textures of the costumes, it also depends on our aging and how we're going to age things and do patina finishes on things. And also when there is going to be slight blood on the clothing, like, so that it can, with the lighting, it does look like the proper color that it's supposed to be. We have parameters of what our blood color can be in PG-13 films, so we want to take that into consideration. But I do go to Yo often about showing him colors. I send him swatches, especially if it's something in a white I want to use. There was a fabric that I wanted to have for Dr. Gall's character, and I didn't know how badly it would moire on camera. So it was something like that. I sent, we actually did a camera test. I sent it over and had Yo test it, and he was like, yeah, it's a really cool fabric, but you absolutely can't use it.
Look at you. Your makeshift shirt and your too tight shoes, trying desperately to fit in when I know the snows don't have a pot to piss in.
Tom's very dark-haired, so we needed to make him lighter.
Tom's head is shaved from the very beginning. So his head is shaved before we start shooting, and his hair is bleached out. And then you have to put a wig on that because he has to wear the wig for all the academy stuff and the beginning part of the film. And it's only later in the film where he has his actually real hair and his shaved head. So Nikki had a lot of challenges to deal with. I mean, there's several wigs in the film, and it's nice when you can't tell that they're wigs, and that's a huge accomplishment, you know?
That head shaving on camera. We made this partial bowl cap with punched hair inside that we shave on camera. It was a bit stressing, but it was also lovely to do, of course.
Trish Somerville was one of the first people I met of the whole cast and crew in LA. We did a fitting, and from the jump, she was so invested in the visual storytelling, which I love about her. She's costume and design and everything, but she's a storyteller. That's first and foremost, that's what she's good at. And I love that, because what an actor wants to do is tell a story. And so when you've got a designer who really cares about what is the story we're telling here and how do we make that represented visually, that's exactly what Trish does. That first meeting, we tried on some of the costumes. We tried on the Peacekeeper outfit, and we tried on the school uniform, the academy uniform. And I remember just seeing like the vast difference between the Academy uniform, which is, you know, this bright rouge, they call it Academy Rouge, and it's also very, it's like kind of contemporary because she's bringing kilts into it, which is kind of a very contemporary, you know, unisex clothing thing, which I love, but then she's also made it kind of boxy and quite authoritarian and utilitarian, and she's kind of meshed these two worlds in this way that feels very unique and original, very dystopian.
And with the school uniforms, I really wanted them to be one uniform for everyone to wear. We didn't get the difference of you could pick a skirt or pants or shorts, whatever, a sweater. No, I wanted it to be everyone the same because I feel the Capitol always lets you understand that you're one of a million. There's not really anything special about you, that you're just a sea of people.
And then we tried on the uniform for the Peacekeepers in District 12, and it reminded me of like the Stormtroopers. It reminded me of like a really oppressive force. I remember in that moment thinking, oh, she gets the story. And I was like halfway through the book at that point, and so I was there with Trish trying on these costumes, while also like the book was in my bag and I was halfway through it, and it was this surreal moment where I was like, oh, we're making that thing, that book that's in my bag, we're here making it right now. And that was a real kind of icebreaker moment for me.
And then in the end, he's in this Bordeaux overcoat, giving him the strong shoulder, and that's kind of where he has this transformation. We were calling it the new man look, because it is this transformation of everything he's been through, the people he's killed, the people he has seen killed, and, you know, and he's really grown in so many ways, good and bad.
We gave him like a 1940s style look, still incorporating some of the curl in his hair, but making him look a little more grown up, a little more polished.
And I think for that, it was just having him be this very assertive, serious, dressed man walking in to confront Highbottom about what he's been through. And I wanted to, in the books it says he's in a white suit, but I wanted to keep it in the color palette of the school because I didn't want him, I felt it would be too noticeable if he's walking through these corridors in white. So Francis and I had a conversation about that. If I could lean into the color palette of the school uniforms, but give him something, you know, different and more mature to wear there so that he doesn't pop out and is not so noticeable, because he literally is trying to get in and murder Highbottom. There was a lot of conversation about Lucy Gray's rainbow dress. There's a lot of description in the book, and then there was the descriptions in the script. And for me, that's one of the things that I had to spend a lot of time in my head about, because I really wanted to be respectful to Suzanne and what she saw and wrote in her book.
I think Trish had a pretty impossible task with this movie, and she somehow did the greatest job one could ever do on a film. I mean, you know, Suzanne, we love Suzanne. She gives maybe 2 descriptions of what Lucy Gray wears for the entire book, if you're reading it, and it really is, she's wearing a dress with ruffles, and the ruffles are pink, yellow, and blue. That's all I can remember reading, and so when I got the part, I was really wondering how it was gonna work out, and it is beautiful. This is a hand-painted vest. You know, the detailing on the, there's so much detail that went into it.
The intricacy of the bodice with the snakes in the pattern of her dress, the fineness, the delicateness of her skirt, the colors in her skirt, the design of her skirt. It is an incredible piece of wardrobe that she designed.
Beyond this dress, there's so many incredible things that she wears, because it's this hand-me-down, turn-of-the-century clothing that she wears, and they went and thrifted this 100-year-old vest that I wear on stage at the Hob, and all the things I wear for my performances with the Covey, the skirts, the dresses. I wear even like a beautiful, like, crocheted bathing suit when we're at the lake scenes. And I mean, Trish just did such a beautiful job.
With Rachel's costumes, I really wanted it to have this feel of a world traveler, you know, because her character gets placed in her Covey. They get placed in District 12. They're contained there, but she mentions in the story of how they travel, you know, and they're this musical group that brings light and joy to different districts, but they get contained in District 12. And so I wanted it to be this kind of, everything is slightly worn, there's a lot of handwork on them, a lot of embroidery, and I wanted to have this folksy kind of feel to it to show some heritage. Because I think in District 12 and with the Lucy Gray character, there is this closeness about her lineage and her family and what it means to have a sense of community. And it's so completely different than what the capital is. So, well, you know, it was a lot of definitely a lot of aging and patining on her costumes. And we had an amazing team in Berlin that I'm really, really grateful for, that did just such beautiful jobs of dyeing and patining and so much handwork that you do see and don't see. And our cutter fitters were just really incredible, that if they had any extra time, you know, they would come back and say, oh, I can add a few more beads, or I can add a few more flowers, I'll hand stitch it. So I was really grateful to them. And it really shines in Lucy's clothing and in the covey of what you see. And I felt it just lent itself to that type of character, where it would be something that they're very prideful about. So yeah, her costumes were really fun to do.
Lucy, she has quite a few looks on this, weirdly enough. And we started with the games, so we had a lot of, you know, it was just her dirty and sweaty the whole time. And then, you know, once we moved on to the lake scenes and stuff like that, we did a little more natural look and less dirt and a youthful look. But we also got to do some really fun looks for the Hob. She had 2 different performance looks, and then the Reaping Day, too. Most of the people in District 12 were always really dirty and covered in coal, and so, except for on the Reaping Day, it was as if they cleaned themselves up. And for me, I looked at Lucy like that was almost her performance. She knew what she was doing. So I gave her more of a look that day.
I've broken free of my laboratory today to examine you, the leaders of the next generation.
The preparation time to get into the look of Dr. Gall is major, and it's taking a lot of times. And every department, we have 4 different departments. So we start with prosthetics, then she's going to makeup, then she's in hair, and then she's in costume. So all in all, we're speaking of a long preparation time before we go on set where we shoot, and then we have also to get Viola back.
So one of her contacts is an ice blue that I created with Jessica Nelson in Los Angeles, and Sergio, who is Viola's makeup artist, created the eye shape and the lip on her, and I think obviously that was amazing.
We needed her to look slightly older, so we added the grey to her hair and we gave her some 40s style shapes. And then there was an image of a woman with this amazing fro and beautiful colours and everything, and with some grey and, you know, a silver streak in her hair. And it just suits Viola so well. With the costumes and everything, it's such a great balance of this massive hair and then these fabulous costumes. And yeah, so that was really exciting. And also it was really difficult to source that hair as well, so that was a real challenge for my wig maker in London.
With Dr. Gall, one of the things Francis brought out to me early on was he said she has this Willy Wonka essence to her. So for me, it was taking that into consideration, and also my wanting her to be, you know, a character in the film that is a little bit more fashion forward and advanced than, say, the rest of the people in the Capitol, just because of she's this mad scientist. And so for her character, it was really important to have color and a lot of texture and patterns, a lot of kind of very progressive textiles and fabrications that we used. And with her red lab coat, it was another thing where I wanted her to be a little bit off-putting. So, you know, with the ombre and dégradé that we did on the coat, it kind of leans itself into like blood that's draining. And then adding the red latex gloves just gives her another little level of being off-putting, because she does have this really, her character has this really jovial side to her and this childlike side. So it's this nice juxtaposition of this childlike innocent quality to her, but then there's this really, really dark evil side to her. And so I wanted to translate that into a lot of the shapes and the silhouettes in her clothes, and trying to make her look older. We wanted Viola to look older than what she is.
There is a lot going on character-wise, so I wouldn't call it only a character or aging prosthetic makeup. It's a character makeup. And we have covered her cheeks, we have covered her nose, we gave her a new nose, and she's having an aging on the frown line. And to make a nose in terms of character, I think every woman on this planet should get a new nose one day. I really think it's a major change, because the change we've done, it's a slight we made it a little bit more like an animal, so it is, the tip of the nose is coming a little bit further down, and from the front, you can't see it, it's really, you feel it. And it's to this icy, striking look of her, it's giving a lot of character. Combined with a contact lens, they are major different colors, so it's like a slight bluish, whitish, husky-like, vibrant color, and her eye, which is dark brown.
And then you do see her just kind of transform, and she gets this really mischievous little grin and kind of taps her hands together, and it was just instantly there was Dr. Gall. So that, I think for myself, and I'm sure most costume designers, that's the biggest satisfaction you can get, is this, watching this transformation happen in the fitting, and watching the actors come to life and become that character. And when they're happy, it makes my life so much easier.
Towards the end of the shoot, somebody came up to me and said, Viola wants to speak to you. And I was like, uh-oh, I wonder if there's something wrong. And all she really wanted to know was, could she keep that wig? Of course we let her keep the wig. I loved that she loved the wig enough to want to keep it.
You may begin.
For me, with what's in the book and then what's in the script with Highbottom being a morphling addict, I really wanted to lean into this look of like, an opium den. And so I wanted him to be in very kind of fancy, elaborate, but comfortable pajamas. So everything I did was very uniformed with him. I put him in these two-piece pajama sets with decorative silk frogs or metal frogs on them, and in brocades and in silk velvets, and always keeping him looking like he could kind of care less, even though he does really care about what's happening in the Capitol, and could be fired or murdered at any moment. But it was that ease in him of this kind of opium den feel. And then when he is at any kind of events or has to give speeches, I wanted him to be in kind of cardinal's robes. And it was like this mix between a cardinal's robe and a judge's robe. So having him be in that, and also having it be very, like, keeping his color palette only blacks and navies, and keeping it very textured so that there is sheen, and there's a little bit, you get a little bit of a quality to it instead of it just being matte black fabrics.
It's fitting that both your parents could be here for your big moment.
Peter came in and we discussed the different levels of his addiction looks. And Peter was really into the idea of just having kind of sunken in eyes, and we do a lot of blotchy redness on him. And as the games go on, he progressively gets worse, more sweaty instead of clammy, and by the last scene, he'll be much worse by then. But he was very involved.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, we're in the Hunger Games. It's fun to play dress up,
I'm Lucretius Lucky Flickerman, a man who needs no introduction. You'll know me as your favorite weatherman and amateur magician. Trish Somerville, the costume designer, emailed me. He's kind of drawing photographs of what they were thinking for Lucky. And so that's the first time that I really saw what they were sort of imagining and thinking, and it was so helpful because it's just like, it's like directions, and in the beginning, after I had no idea what anything, I couldn't picture anything. I had no visual reference, because Francis was saying it's going to be different than the other films, and it's a different look, and it's, it takes place many years before. So I had imagined, I guess, things, but when I saw the outfits and hair, it just was like, it just helped. It was one more step in like removing excess, just focusing on who this was and what the world was.
He's scripted as he's a weatherman, and he's getting this great opportunity to be kind of the talking head of the Hunger Games. And with him, I wanted to have a progression of how he builds with fame. And he's kind of, he's insatiable about this attention. And so speaking with both Nikki and with Sherry, I also wanted to have a progression with his hair and with the makeup that he wears.
His hair is very structured, so we start off with him, quite sort of normal 40s style, and then his hair grows throughout. So he becomes quite the character, you know, he sort of really evolves and into this kind of mad TV presenter.
It really is like a rising sun. So that was something that they presented, was like, your hair in the beginning is going to be lower and it's going to get higher and higher and higher, and your mustache is going to get bigger. So that, I loved it. I thought it was so funny.
He has two different mustaches because he starts off very drab with just like a plain pencil mustache, and then like the second one is a lot more like flamboyant with the curls and the which really doesn't make sense, because how would it grow like that in a couple of days? But we just kind of didn't care. Like, let people wonder, is that fake? Does he have like a wig? He's putting on different mustaches. So we just kind of went with it.
So yeah, his character was great to dress, and Jason was so much fun in fittings because he would come in with, you know, all these ideas about the weather, and then he's kind of he's a magician by desire, but he's a weatherman by trade. So he would come in with all these ideas of, you know, magic tricks that he could do, and how could we incorporate that in the costumes.
Miss Phibbs, if you're gonna vomit, please do it off camera. I read that magicians, sometimes, you know, their pockets are bigger on the inside than they are on the outside, so they can hide more things. So all my jackets have these like huge hidden pockets and things, and I could keep all my props in them, and just little things like that she didn't have to do something like that, but that's a detail that really makes you feel like you can reach in your pockets and there's all these tricks in there and things. They're really in these pockets, and it's just like so helpful.
For Tigress, she, along with Dr. Gold, were the two characters that I wanted to be the most Capitol-like. So there's a designer that I love, the period designer Lily Ann, and she made beautiful women's suiting that would be very extreme shapes. So it was very classic 40s and 50s, but it was very exaggerated. Like, she did peplums, very narrow skirts, and severe shoulders. So that was a designer I leaned into quite a bit for a couple of Tigress's costumes. I wanted her to be the softness also, so that's why with her color palette, it's a lot of pinks and roses and purples and lavenders.
Hunter actually came in for the first time when I met her, and she had plucked her eyebrows into a very angular shape that she wanted to do for her character, and it actually really worked.
We bleached my eyebrows, and I feel like that sort of helps kind of, I don't know, like change my face a little bit as far as like how, I don't know, there's something kind of like slightly sickly about it that I think suggests that she might be malnourished to some degree, but then also is able to cover that up or work with it and still like have fun with her makeup in a way, and tie in the vivid like jewel tones that she's dressed in into her face, and still adorn herself in that way.
I just thought it all kind of went together. So I love when actors come in with ideas and you can build upon them.
There was one costume for her that are these really beautiful fuchsia palazzo pants and this really strong shoulder blouse with full chiffon sleeves. And it's in a hospital scene, and I kept teasing Francis because you don't really know when you're building the costumes what the setup is going to be like. You know what the scene is from the script, but you don't know how it's going to be shot so early on. And so when I saw how we were shooting it, I went to Francis and I said, doesn't Tigress just walk into this scene? Because I wanted to see, selfishly, I wanted to see her head to toe, you know? And he said, no, she's sitting. And I'm like, are you sure she's sitting? Maybe she walks into the hospital. She just came to life in everything that we put on her. So she was just a joy to dress, really a joy to dress. What I love about filmmaking is I love being part of a creative team. I love working with the production designer and the DP and the director and the props people and hair and makeup. I love that we all get together and are able to tell this story. And you know, shooting in Berlin was a really incredible experience, and being able to shoot in Poland was a really incredible experience. And you learn so many things each job that you do, and I met really incredible people along the way. And so, yeah, I'm really grateful for that.
And action.
typically in our productions when we make these things, we ramp up to the pieces. Because of our location, we had to start with the pieces. So day one was opening battle pieces, which was just full on. All the actors had to be up to speed. Everybody had to be up to speed. So it was a bit of a gun at the gate, like here we go, into the deep end right off the top. So there wasn't any ramping up to it.
And 3, 2, 1, action!
I think because of the effort that all our cast put into the training side of it, it went off smooth. There was no issues at all. It was really good. It's not a big stunt film per se. Like, we're not throwing people out of buildings and blowing up stuff and all that, but it was definitely a very, very actor action oriented kind of thing. And I just can't say it enough times. Those kids were fantastic.
Scott, I started to work with, and I really love him and his team. I started to work with him on C. He's, Vancouver-based stunt coordinator, really smart guy. Recommended to me by Chivo Emmanuel Lubezki because he had worked on The Revenant. And so I contacted him, and he and his team did amazing work on C. And so some of the battle sequences and the fight sequences on that were just insane.
Okay, going up.
And we brought him out here. But we used the same sort of methodologies, which is that I started to talk to him about where tributes are, where tributes need to be, which tributes need to die, which tributes need to survive, where they need to end up, how some may fight, how some may run. So he had to start to, you have to wrap your head around, when you have almost 24 people, like who's going where and who's got to die and all that kind of stuff. But then what tools can they use? What are the tools that sort of are put there that are representative of the different districts that each of the tributes are from? How can they be used by the tributes, you know what I mean? And so there was like a fair amount of development.
You have time on a rehearsal stage to play with it and throw ideas up. And I have a very good idea where Francis wanted to go with this show. So when I'm on my rehearsal stage with my team, I can try a couple things and I can go, hey, that works, let's try it this way this time. What if you guys are transposed? Let's see where that goes and try this. And what if it goes under the turnstiles instead of over? We try all these things on the stage, and each one of them works, and it doesn't. There's always some hindrance, and then we realize that it's probably better to go over top of the turnstiles and take it from there. So it all came down to rehearsal time. You have to rehearse. When you rehearse, spend your money on the rehearsals. When you're on your shooting days, they'll be shorter days. On our rehearsal stage, I put together 24 stunt people, and we'll call them proxies because we hadn't even had cast at that point. And with our proxies, we put together this fight sequence, which is all about timing. When you're here, you're here, you're here, and 24 people have to do something at that metronome beat of number 13 or number 14, or number 15, to make sure that you've gone from there to over here to interact with this person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then when we put it all together and Francis okayed it, now when our cast started showing up, we started transposing. We take one of our proxies out and we teach a cast member what it was. So now we got 23 stunt people in one cast, and then we got 22 and 2 cast members, et cetera, et cetera. And we slowly integrated our cast members into what our proxy fight that we put together.
When you go down to the ground from that upswing, when you're crawling, you can have a look for Pamela so you know where he is.
Yeah, because I'm not crawling anymore. I haven't crawled in many a take.
Whatever happens.
I've been standing up because I can't crawl in these. Can't do much in these.
You want to put on some runners?
No, it's okay.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
These are helpful, just not to crawl.
Not to crawl? Okay, cool.
So I've been standing up.
When you scramble.
Yeah, I've been standing up, scrambling.
You scramble toward Pamela. You can look to him and see where he is. Yeah. But as soon as you line them up, turn around and clock off.
Yeah.
Then when we had that down, then he'd bring all the actors in, and then he'd videotape the actors, and then I'd come in and talk the actors through everything. So by the time we were actually in the arena, it was really well rehearsed, and we sort of knew exactly how it was going to be shot and what everybody was going to be doing. And what the timing was like. And I find that to be just a really efficient way to be as creative as possible and have the time to kind of develop the ideas within the sequences and then be ready when you need to shoot it.
And 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
That was my first day on set, was the countdown into the Hunger Games and running in. It's called The Bloodbath, which was really great. And I mean, the first thing I had to do was just scream bloody murder for Jessup to try to find him, and then dodge everybody else, dodging Reaper and Quarrel and Mizzen, and trying to get to Jessup so that we could run underground.
So Quarrel comes in, Trident, right, go back this way, and then again, and then forward fall.
Yeah, and then chase her all the way back. So when you scramble back, tell me how you scramble back here.
I was sitting up.
I was stuck on another shoot in London and I missed the 6 weeks of stunt rehearsal that everybody did. And I came in on the first day doing this bloodbath scene that everybody had rehearsed, and everyone was so patient with me. And, you know, Mackenzie had her whole Trident choreography down, and she took the time with me to, you know, teach me where I should go and what's easier for her and what's easier for me. And it all just became such a beautiful collaboration with all of those young kids, all of our stunt people, and our stunt coordinator Scott and Steve, who were just so patient with me because I desperately needed that patience.
Yeah, I mean, it was super fun. I mean, when I first, because I had to, the main thing we worked on was like the fall, because I had to like fall backwards like 15 feet. And at first I was like pretty scared when we rehearsed it in Berlin. I was like, all right, I guess we're doing this. But I mean, I did it a bunch of times and they made sure I was feeling good and safe. And so by the time we got to set, like, it was pretty easy. I just rehearsed it a couple of times. And then once we started rolling, I shot it like a couple times and it was fine. I think it turned out well, so we'll see.
Okay, guys, here we go. And 3, 2, 1, go. Hopefully you'll do it with better acting than my stunt people. This is all about your face. Make contact with it. That's it, okay? So you're never gonna be supported. This is always you doing your thing, and you just have the wires to save it, okay?
Well, we practiced for like 2 weeks back in Berlin. And, you know, I'm always safe on a harness, so it's like, for me, that's not a problem. Height is not a fear of mine, so it was actually very fun. I actually fell off a couple times in practice, but yeah, so just like practicing the fight up there.
I wish I was on a harness, but yeah, nothing like going up there with a harness. And then we've got a few more pieces to do, which just, you know, chasing Lucy. We've got a drone attack that's going to be happening behind you guys.
Hey, Crow, do you mind if I take this one?
Not a chance.
Go! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
We have an amazing stunt team here. There's like a scene where I have to, in self-defense, you know, crush this person with a massive rod with like cement on it. And there's a scene where there's a bombing that happens and all the cement falls down and I get crushed under this burning rod. And all of that was, we always felt safe, but it felt intense. It felt incredibly intense. I've definitely sustained a few bruises and a few twists along the way. But all of that kind of makes it feel more real.
He would have saved you. No.
As the stunt players, I can probably speak for all of them. That was our favorite stunt in the whole film.
Ow, ouch.
That goes back to what every kid thinks about as being a stuntman.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. And 3, 2, 1, go!
Come on, Rachel, you good?
Yeah.
Is like get knocked down the cliff and roll down the hill sort of thing. So it was really, when we visualize it, and I was talking to the art department when they showed me some of their drawings, you know, I tweaked a couple things to get the right angle to the slope and all that. And then we built the slope out of foam, basically. Not so much rubber, but a soft foam that's got like a latex paint on it. So there's a give to it. It's not concrete sort of thing. It's forgiving enough that if you did whack your head on it, you weren't going to get a concussion or something like that. The biggest risk was getting somebody's foot in the back of your head or something as you're rolling over.
Cut.
The Hunger Games has always been one of my favorite projects that I'd worked on, and when I heard that Francis had the opportunity to do it again, I was really happy to hear that he took it. Just diving back into that world of Pan Am, and I always knew there was such a rich history that was unexplored. So when I read that it was a prequel, I assumed it was going to be about the start of the games. I didn't know it was going to be focused on snow. And so as soon as I heard that, then it became even more interesting.
Working with Mark has been great. The first time I worked with him was when we were doing the Mockingjay movies. He intuits, I think, the way that I think the scene should play out, and so, you know, we seem to be in sync that way right up front.
He's trusting my selections, my performance selections, and my timing, and my coverage. That's already half the battle.
Because what I could do is hold on this, extend this tail.
They said I might find you out here.
It's also faster. And then have her look like down like that.
Yeah.
And then cut around to her here.
Yeah, ooh, nice. And then you're out.
I still got one.
One of the real joys as an editor is seeing those first dailies coming in, you know, every day in my Avid, because you have an idea in your head, like anybody might, what it's going to look like, but seeing the coverage and seeing how the costumes or the production design and certainly how Yo shot it, it's always the most fun part.
What you could try to do that would actually really shorten it is what if it went straight into the help me
right away. And
so it hits him, and then there's a beat, and he says, help me, and then he looks up, and then you see her coming through the smoke, as opposed to the scream.
The most challenging thing in this film was the pure scope, I think. You know, there's a lot of material in there, and having to bring it down. Francis always said, we're gonna have to really find the real story here and focus. And then, because of the three parts, part one being the mentor, part two being the prize, part three being the peacekeeper, not linger on one part too long or make it feel like you don't want another part.
You want to see this explosion again?
Yeah, why not?
Please. Cornelius, please don't let me die here tomorrow.
I think the games we knew were going to come down even more proportionally because as fun as they are and as exciting as they are, it's just the games and it's the story stuff that you really want to hold on to. Francis was intent. He's like, let's tell this as efficiently as we can.
Do you think they're done?
I wonder if we need the reverse of him in the beginning where he's like here, or if you just go from this to cut this out to here. So it's like the screen.
Do you think they're done?
And you get that.
This film, of everything I've worked on, it feels like it's the most streamlined. As every frame, every shot has a purpose. And it's amazing how many times we had to go through it. Just start at the beginning and make another pass and say, do we really need that? Do we really need that? And taking it out and realize we didn't need it. You know, it's a long book. I think it's the longest of the books. And it was a little daunting at first because it was even a long script. In a way, they are 3 different movies. That was one thing about the cutting the movie that we realized when we started showing people is that when you're reading the book and you get to the end of part 2, you know you have a whole other chapter sitting in your hands. But most people watching the end of the games thinking, oh, well, this is gonna wrap up soon. And then you're out in the meadows of District 12, and then it's an entire other chapter. And to me, my favorite part of the film.
You can go back home. Will you?
No more loose ends.
Besides me.
Besides you. You wouldn't tell anyone?
Of course not.
You know, the turn that happens at the end, if you feel like they're so in love, you wonder, it comes out of the blue and you're wondering why that happened. There was all of the performance stuff that you had to modulate and figure out how much they trust each other so that when she takes off, you know, it's not out of the blue. It's a little bit more set up. One thing that Francis told me right from the start, cutting this film, is that he didn't want it to be a movie of a bunch of people watching monitors, because he easily could have devolved into that, because all the stuff in Heavensbee Hall or in all of the scenes where Snow is watching the scenes. I had to cut actually the scenes for production as if they were broadcast on TV. So I essentially cut a version of the entire games as if they were watched on TV on a Capitol monitor, right? It was a good thing I did it because they ended up playing the entire 20-minute take and various parts in the games where the actors could react to the screen, and it's all the stuff that we did back in the cutting room. And this is the same thing that Jason Schwartzman used to write a lot of his ad-lib jokes beforehand to kind of get a sense of what was gonna happen.
6 tributes gone in minutes. If they keep it up at this pace, we're gonna be out of here in no time.
And that's another thing that was interesting that Francis told me from the beginning, was that he wanted to keep it in Snow's perspective.
They've gone underground very quickly, but we're prepared for this. What you're seeing now is a live feed of security cameras.
He wanted to keep the whole movie in Snow's POV, so he was never aware of anything that wasn't from Lucy Gray. So that's how the monitors played in a lot.
Adrian Devet, who did the visual effects on this movie, he and I met on the other Hunger Games movies. We became friends, and then not long after the Hunger Games movies, he left DNEG to become an independent visual effects supervisor, and I asked him if he wanted to do C with me, and then did Slumberland. Coming off of something like Slumberland that was so sort of obviously VFX heavy, we wanted to do something that was completely different, which is why I really didn't want to use blue screens. I wanted to be on locations. And I did want most of the effects to be invisible. But there are a ton of effects in the movie in terms of city extensions, you know, augmentation of like the buildings to make streets in Berlin look more like the Capitol, crowd duplication, but it's just much more straightforward. So it's just a very different approach and a much more naturalistic approach.
So what we've got here is, this is just a selection of some of the shots that we're doing for this movie. And here, this is the arena where the Hunger Games happens. So this is what we shot. This is the Olympic Stadium outside of Berlin. And the thing inside, which is the top 3 layers of the wedding cake with the domed top, is based on the Hala Stulecka in Wrocław in southern Poland. And we've taken both those stadia and we've added them together to make this. And we've added all these background buildings and the mountains in the background and the trees and the environment and everything like that.
Welcome to the arena for the 10th annual Hunger Games.
So this is the bombing sequence, which is one of the major visual effects in the movie. How do you even go about shooting something like this? We basically shot it in the clean arena with some lights that represented the explosions. We did some previs to work out where those explosions were going to happen, and Yo Willems, the DP, put lights where those things were going to occur, like these little explosions. And then we shot with this like really long, complex camera move. We did about 3 takes, and they nailed the performance.
It's funny when you talk about what's being shot on the day, it's very different from a year later when you're in post. You know, at the time, we were imagining that a lot more of the arena was going to be as is. It's such a beautiful location, and it was really awesome to get all of this in this practical environment. But in fact, when you see some of the work that's gone into the environment here, you can see how different it is from what you saw, because that damage from the bombing was really extensive, and its effects are on every inch of the environment. So in fact, what we have here is a completely CG environment.
This is the post-bombing arena, which was dressed with these sort of piles of rubble everywhere. But we had to carve these pathways all around the place for cameras to be pushed on dollies and for all these stunt actors and actors to run around, because we couldn't have them running on debris. It was too dangerous. So, you know, when we came to do this shot, we've added all this digital debris in everywhere, as well as all the other arena stuff, which is adding this scorching and scarring and dents all over the walls, and replace all the seats with damaged seats, and some of them are missing. It's a lot of work that hopefully people don't notice.
We sort of knew that there were going to be really two biggest VFX sequences in the movie, and one is the bombing of the arena and Gaul snakes in the arena.
This is a big moment in the world of the Hunger Games, because this is the first time that we see the games actually evolve from the hand-to-hand combat between the tributes to a struggle for survival against the increasingly cruel punishment of the Capitol. In this case, massive snakes are being unleashed by the Capitol.
When the games actually take place, there's a large scene where one of the Capitol's drones flies in and drops a huge sort of monolithic cylinder, and then it shatters and explodes, and hundreds of thousands of snakes fall out of it like an avalanche and fall down the cornucopia and take out a bunch of tributes.
This is really exciting sequence for the visual effects team, because we get to figure out how these massive thousands of snakes are going to move together and create essentially like one big snake swarm monster that just barrels through the environment, knocking down everybody in its path.
Is it over?
So this is all very, very like work in progress versions of the snakes. This is the cylinder being lowered onto the cornucopia, and it's an unstoppable force of snakes just radiating out from the cornucopia, just spreading out and just destroying and killing anything in their path. These snakes went through a lot of development. As described in the novel, they're described as sort of rainbow colored. We thought, how do we do that? And through various iterations, we ended up arriving at this. The surface quality of the snake's skin has a feature which is called iridescence, which means that when light shines on it in a certain way, it breaks up and forms a rainbow sort of reflection. It was a real challenge to get the light response on them to be sort of consistent.
I know that Francis and our supervisor Adrian really liked some sequences that they saw in some nature shows where some real packs of snakes are chasing after lizards, and if you look at what happens with snakes in nature, they actually move in a really creepy way, and they crawl all over each other, and we really want to make this as real as possible. So one of the biggest technical challenges here is going to be the shots where we see the snakes crawling up the actors' bodies, and particularly Lucy Gray in her iconic dress. So we started with a series of 3D scans to capture the data of not just the actors' body geometry, but also the fabric of their costumes, so that we can really sell the integration between the snakes and the actors' performances.
What we're working on right at the moment, actually, is making it really convincing that the snakes are actually physically on top of them and interacting with them, because they're wearing very loose fabrics, especially her dress and her sleeves. So anything that touches them is going to move the sleeves. So we've replaced them with CG fabric so that we can really get the snakes to feel like they're cinching over her clothing here and moving the fabric with her.
You know, with the amount of debris that's on the ground that we now see, which we didn't have on the day when we were shooting, there's a lot of really detailed interaction that has to go on with the snakes as they're traveling over all of the bits of debris and the dust that's being kicked up. And so there's a big increase in the simulation effects that were required for this. So it's very heavy in the effects work.
They figured out the physics of what the maximum of what that container would hold, and then when it kind of spills out, it is supposed to be shocking. It turns into like a little bit of a horror movie. Most obvious VFX that people would see are the snakes, the arena, the drones. Drone technology has become so much more advanced and the operators are so skilled. I've seen that over the last 10 years. It's these shots you never thought you could have gotten before, or it would have been a helicopter or some really advanced, rigging. It's amazing to see how steady those shots are now and how they can really establish much better because they're wide and they don't all have to be CG. In particular, in this case, because there are drones within the story, they used a lot of them for POV shots, and there's a few shots where the drones, once you've established where they're flying around, cutting to that POV shot of it coming in toward Lamina.
Yeah, so this is the new cut with the new animation.
Mark's
Correct.
timing?
Yes. Yeah.
New trims.
This to me is still too slow. This is the piece where I think we need to speed up that tip down and make it feel like there's more weight.
Clearly you can't put a helicopter inside an arena. A drone is the perfect way. You didn't have to get a helicopter out there. You get a little team and a drone, and drones are so great and so maneuverable. It's become really fun. So we could use drones in the arena to sort of establish when the blinds are opening, or the sort of opening establisher of the arena itself, or even in some of the action of the fight. The things like this big, instead of having a helicopter, it's just so much nicer.
So this is the drone attack where tributes get attacked by drones that come flying through the windows back here. The challenge here was, we have to shoot this scene with the actors, imagining where the drones would be.
Knowing that you're going to eventually be cutting these VFX shots that didn't exist. For a long time I was working with the previs, and a long time I was working with the early versions of it, or like with the snakes. Not having the snakes until later, you're just cutting like nothing. You're not really taking them seriously. But as soon as they started making those snakes look real, I was creeped out. Then it made you realize when Lucy Gray's sitting there with the snakes at the end on her hands, you're wondering if they're gonna bite her, because they turn into real snakes instead of like these cartoon snakes that you've been kind of cutting with for the whole time. And so even for me, it always evolves as the VFX come in.
She's won.
Jeremy and I go sort of way back. Often what would happen is, the editor is putting in their own sound design as they go, and that becomes like what you screen and test screen with and all that kind of stuff. Jeremy just starts very, very early, and he basically works alongside the editor, so that as we're sort of working on reels, we kind of turn them over to him, and we've kind of kept that up. And it's been a really important process in the way that I work and Jeremy works, and the way that we kind of carry through the whole sound process all the way through to the end.
Part of the sequence that's kind of fun about this is there's all these rocks that kind of fly by camera, like you kind of see these little rocks, that go by. About 2 weeks ago, we went up to Mount Wilson and recorded a bunch of rocks. We just threw giant rocks by microphones on the pavement and stuff like that.
I'm always amazed, and Jeremy doesn't think I notice them, but I notice a lot of the smaller things he does, all the things he has to do to fill out a space or some background sound, or even discrete specific, gravel move or something like that I knew wasn't there in production, that he had to actually go back in and physically craft and put in. I'm always amazed that Jeremy could fill out that space. I haven't seen Foley in a long time, especially on a film that I was working on that I knew all the sounds personally.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, that was nice. Okay, good.
If this chair's working, should we go to reel 8 and do those chairs? Or do you want to do something different for right now?
Well, I have this one, which is actually like a type of hat he's wearing. It's hard and it's got the thing. It'll be great for the pull-off, but the set-down, if you want...
Oh, we'll try it.
Does it seem okay? If it seems okay, I'll go with it.
Well, it sounds a little small.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we can go to 8. Yeah, let's go to 8.
8.
Real 8? Okay. Yep. And if you want to do the knife now, the knife drop at 14:02.
Yeah, he's got it.
Nice.
All right, good.
Garbage can.
Bang, 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 bang. That'll be fun. Okay. So depending, I've got three versions. This one's kind of like an obnoxious, or hold on one second, because I think this is going to probably be more like what we're hearing, even though I like that technique.
I think I like all three.
I know, right? The other one's funny.
How about we give all three?
Let's do it.
Sound can help the visual effects seem more real. So, because this is the 5th movie, even though it's before those worlds, I'm trying to take little Easter eggs of what I did in the other movies and incorporate them. Like, for instance, there's a recording that I used to make the hovercraft in the other movies. And it had a very distinct thing, and it was for the overhead rotor 0G, whatever technology that was. And I'm incorporating that sound into the drones that we have in our movie. Part 3 is definitely my favorite. Ways to like twist those scenes a little bit in a sonic way, and not in a way that's totally perceptible, but if you were to look at the start of a scene and you look at the end of the scene, they're very different.
Having James come back was never really a question for us. His music is so integral and so utterly identified with this series. It's impossible for me to imagine a version of these movies that isn't his score. They're completing the experience of the scene.
Well, Hunger Games have been a part of my life now for a long time, and they are wonderful musical opportunities. I love working with Francis, so that combination is hard to beat. I think originally we had a mandate to keep the score in the spirit and the feelings of all the Hunger Games movies that came before. But what I discovered soon was that this is an entirely new set of characters. There's a different sensibility to this movie than the others. I just found it very easy to write to this movie, but in a very distinctive way.
Honestly, scoring is one of my favorite parts, if not my favorite part, about making a film. And I think part of it's working with James. He's so in control. We've worked through everything, so it's a very relaxed time for me, and it's really fun to get to see sort of all the musicians bring all of this music to life.
One of the mandates was no electronics, which was a huge difference. It had to be created within the orchestra, so that required a different challenge for me in terms of orchestration. Winds, who are playing dee-da-dee-da-da-da, just a tiny bit less, please, at 23.
That's first clarinet and first oboe.
Okay, and let's not let it get quite so loud at 29.
It was really fun to sort of explore with him a new sound for the Hunger Games, right? That there's going to be some familiar elements, some slightly familiar thematic material, but really we wanted to come up with a different sound. And a lot of that is sort of based on the kind of period element of the movie itself, and that it takes place 65 years before the original movies, and us wanting the music to reflect that a little bit as well.
Now, I think there are several main themes that we've reinvented and figured out a way to integrate into the story without using any that were directly and powerfully attached, for instance, to Katniss. Tried to stay away from Katniss's theme. There's a resonant Hunger Games bit of the score, which I think people will enjoy because I think they're touchstones. Hanging Tree is back in a completely different kind of iteration and treatment, but I think the familiarity of that will be really welcome to people, and it'll be kind of just comforting in a way.
And so I think the approach has been slightly, changed for James and I. And I think one of the things we wanted to do was go a little more classical, and I'd say a little more raw, so that it just has, the music has a slightly more aged feel to it. An added element that happens quite often when I work with James is he'll bring in these really super talented musicians. And this time he brought in the pianist Yu Zhuang, who's a phenomenal player. And so it was really amazing to watch her work and have her play some of the music in the film. But what I really love about it is that sometimes James will get these ideas, and he had an idea to bring her in to do piano for the movie very early. And I think partially the idea of bringing her in started to change the way he thought about the music in the movie. There's a lot more piano in this score than there ever has been in any of the other Hunger Games. And so it's really just interesting to see, when you bring somebody that talented in, how it actually starts to inform the music itself.
I've long been a huge fan of Yu Zhuang, along with millions of other people. And once I knew she was on board, I started writing different kinds of piano parts. And I think what it did is give us a really interesting entree and expression of the score, which we wouldn't have had before. That a lot of these dramatic or very tense moments, we did piano. We used piano in a more elaborate way than I ever would have before. And I think it really became a very important voice in the score. It was moving just to watch her all day, but then the orchestra left, and I had written 3 solo piano suites for her based on 3 of the main themes of the Hunger Games. And I just came out here and sat sort of next to the piano and, looked around me at this incredible room, and Yu Zhuang was playing my little suites back to me, for me, in that one room by myself. And I just kind of lost it. It was just so great. I don't have the vocabulary to express how it's the high point of my career.
What James did, which I thought was really fun, was he wrote these suites based on classic Hunger Games themes. A Katniss theme, a Ruse theme, and had her do her version of those themes for soundtrack, which they were just incredible to listen to.
I think we're good.
We have it, yeah. Cool. I think we're done.
That's a wrap.
This experience has been fantastic, I have to say, because I wanted to go back. I really loved the book. I loved the series. I loved, working with Nina, working with Suzanne, and was sort of happy to go back in the world. But I have to say that in the beginning, there were nerves, right? That this is, not that it's not an interesting story, but just nerves of are people interested in a Hunger Games movie without Katniss? Just that kind of basic question. And so that was sort of always at the back of my head. But, you know, I had faith in the story, and it was a story that I wanted to help tell. And I was really excited about the world building possibilities, and excited about sort of starting, you know, with a blank canvas cast-wise.
As someone who was a fan of the original movies, I think this one has, in a way, even more scope, because it begins in the Capitol. It begins with these young people who are the future politicians and the future people that we see later in the movies, in my case. And we get to see them kind of working their way through the Capitol post-war, and then we see them move into the districts, we see them move out of the districts, beyond the districts. I think audiences will be very grateful to get a glimpse into the kind of origin of what made the Hunger Games what they are. I know watching the original movies, always felt like, how did they end up here? You know, how did this country, which is very similar to a modern day America or England or insert country here, how did they end up in this place? And you start to begin to watch it and go, oh, it's not that far-fetched. Like, there is a world in which that could happen. Hopefully it won't, ever. But, you know, it's like not that crazy, it's not that insane. And yet you get the entertaining factor of this YA novel that is kind of all about love and relationships and family and fighting for your own and fighting against injustice, mixed in with these real-world issues which are heavy and meaningful. I think if there's anything audiences want, it's entertainment and meaning at the same time, and this has all of that.
And that is a work finish on Rachel.
I think I'll look back on this and be glad that I laughed as often as I did, because I've done a lot of movies that have really rough storylines and heartbreaking, tragic storylines for my characters in particular, and I've never laughed as much as I have on this set. And I think this is the darkest movie I've done. So it's just one of those beautiful, I don't even want to say that it doesn't take itself too seriously. It recognizes itself as a piece of pop culture and a piece of film history, and we might as well have a good time while we're doing it. And I think that's the attitude that everybody brings to set every day, whether you're Dave operating ACAM or you're Val who dresses me every morning. Like, everybody just always has a really beautiful smile on their faces underneath their masks. And they're always, I mean, it really just, everyone is so helpful and so wonderful. And I feel very, very fortunate that I was welcomed so warmly on this set, and that I got to share this experience with my best friend Josh and my new best friend Tom and Peter Dinklage. My new best friend, Peter Dinklage.
We all stick together, and it's a great community. Doing what I do for a living, I'm lucky with that, because every time if you're lucky, every time you enter a new community for a couple months, and with open arms, and no, it's been great.
You know, yesterday, day one of the Hunger Games was kind of like my first marriage. All the action in the beginning, and then everything else was just spent hiding in bad lighting. It really is its own story. I mean, it's just a story of a person changing, getting trusting, not trusting, becoming encrusted in all kinds of things to protect yourself from feeling. The story of a young person who goes on to become pretty ruthless. So that's a big epicness, big story. It is the Hunger Games. Whatever alchemy that is, they have it. And it's just like there, and it's so cool to see it.
I remember the first day I went into a soundstage at Babelsberg, and I was watching Scott Attia, my stunt coordinator. He had all the actors that were the tributes stand in the circle and do the countdown, and the games were beginning, and I was like, all right, we're back. It was exciting, like, we're back in the games. But then when we got into the arena and I saw how the arena just like looked when it was dressed, and how the tributes all looked, not in uniforms and in their own clothing, and the grittiness and the dirtiness of it all and the feeling, I was like, wow, this feels like a Hunger Games movie, but it feels unique, it feels fresh, it feels like a proper standalone Hunger Games film with its own unique qualities. And I found that really exciting.
What is exciting right now for us too is that Suzanne, who obviously has been integrally involved from the moment she entrusted me with her books, she's seen the finished movie now and is so pleased with it, so proud of it. feels such connection to it as a rightful adaptation of her work. That is what makes me feel excited and proud now to know that we did right by her. And the hope that by doing right by her, we do right by all of the fans of the Hunger Games, whether they are fans of the original movies or whether they came to the original movies later, or whether they may even go see this movie first and then decide they're curious to see the other movies if they haven't already. I'm incredibly excited for that. Anytime anybody, honestly, at this point, new has seen the movie, I get all excited and want to hear what they think. So the idea that, God willing, millions of people will get to go see the movie and say what they think is, yes, beyond exciting for me.